Chance.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our MPO board meeting. It is Monday, September 23rd, 2024 at 9 a.m. This meeting is called to order. Now I will ask Mrs. Eubanks to confirm a quorum. Do we have a quorum? Thank you very much. And at this time, I have the honor of asking Mayor Shirley Groover Bryant, City of Palmetto, to provide our invocation, and then please lead us in the pledge.
Thank you. Please rise. Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, we ask that the group assembled today is blessed with strength, wisdom, vision, and enthusiasm for our tasks at hand. As we plan and share together now, may you guide us and lead us in our common goals. We ask safe travels for those in attendance today as they return to their homes following this meeting. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Bryant. And I do say that with great respect, having that honor, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So turning it over to David.
Thank you, Chair, Mayor. At this time, I believe you're going to open the meeting for public comment, including comments on any agenda items. On the screen, you can see 4 ways for the public to provide input to you all, the board. All comments that are received are shared with board members and made part of the public record. Meeting is being live streamed as publicly noticed and will be available on METV and the MPO YouTube page later. Do we have any public comment cards? Very good. And then you may proceed.
All right, thank you. Next, we will have agenda item number 4, the Public Transportation Task Force. First is the Manatee County Area Transit Quarterly Report. Kevin Holt will come forward. Transit Division Manager for Manatee County Public Works will present. Welcome.
Good morning, board members. So with MCAT's quarterly report, we got our ridership since going fare free has gone up extraordinary, actually. It's been 40% higher than last year. I attribute it to some of the frequency improvements. Of course, the 99, we're going to do the Route 6 very shortly. But also we are counting these fares with the APCs. So it's more accurate for recording purposes. Also, since January 2024, we teamed up with the Breeze for Longboat Key service. So we're hearing good feedback. It's helping the community of the Longboat Key area there. So we're happy to contribute with that one. Okay, the Route 99, we also teamed up with the Breeze as well to provide 20-minute service along the corridors there. That's been pretty successful, as you can see. One of the things we're proud of too is the convention center with the Gulf Islands ferry. So we're getting a lot of ridership from the ferry going to Coquina, Amory Island, and from Palmetto there. So we're looking to actually work with Elliott and take over the ferry eventually. It's been really successful.
While we're on that, why don't I ask a question or kind of give Sarasota County an update? Because we talked a little bit about some of the ferry and the transit as being so successful that ultimately if we can work with Sarasota County instead of them reinventing the wheel in the future, we could actually make this a regional transit program where it goes from downtown Bradenton all the way St. Armand Circle, downtown Sarasota. We in the Manatee County through our commission and the TDC board have purchased a $3.2 million boat that's in the works, trying to get a grant for the second one. And I think people are really excited about how you could go from downtown Sarasota in a way, all the way to downtown Bradenton and a lot of stops in between. So I know we talked about that a little bit in the past, but I think it's something we really need to keep on the radar because the success we're having right now, even with the boats that probably 35 to 40% of the time are weather canceled.
They are.
With the new boat,
Yeah.
it would be 95%
Yeah.
operational because of the inside and the quality of the boat. So
Yeah, it's a steel vessel,
Right.
I believe. And Elliot has been he's had interest, and I think he's coordinating some efforts with Sarasota as well.
right, right. But just to put it out publicly here, it's something that could be really transportation advantage for us in Sarasota, Manatee County.
Also, some of the updates is since COVID, we're still struggling with operator shortages. We're still trying to tackle some issues with that. We're allocated for 110 bus operator positions. We're about 100 right now. So hopefully we get to that point. A couple things I do want to go over that we're working on too is the veterans wraps on some of our buses right now. We got clearance from FDOT and we're promoting the services for the veteran services in Manatee County, showcasing what we do for our veteran community. And also in saying that, we're also going to launch in sometime in November is the Veterans on Demand service within the county boundaries. So we're really looking forward to that. We have a nice software company we're working with, and it's going to go from medical appointments point A to point B. So we're very excited to get in the mix with that. And then also we got a service development grant on the Route 6. So we're going to increase. So right now for Manatee County, we have the Route 3 going 30-minute service. We have the 99 going 20-minute service, and now soon the Route 6. So we're very happy to improve our transit. And one thing that's not on here that I want to bring up too is also we just recently in the last couple of months got security at our downtown and DeSoto stations, which is also keeping a lot of people more the presence there and stuff, and then keeping everybody safe. So we're proud of that. If there's any questions, I'd be happy.
Any questions? Mayor Ryan? Oh, no. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I do have a couple questions, and I apologize if you've gone over this at past meetings. Mayor Alpert and I were unable to attend due to a conflict with our commission meeting schedule. So apologies in advance if this is repetitive, but I do have a couple of questions. You mentioned in your report that the ridership had increased by 40%. You attribute some of that to 99 being every 20 minutes, which is fabulous, by the way, I have to say that. But I read your report as it being to the automatic passenger counters. So is it actual ridership has increased or just counting has increased?
No.
Efficient.
So most agencies, they go by their GFI fare box, and it calculates the passes and everything. So, but other agencies are using automatic passenger counters, which are sensors on the doors and stuff like that. I think it's more accurate. We're looking to see it's more accurate. For example, the trolleys, the Amarillo Island trolley, they're actually physically doing a tally. So the automatic passenger counters are more accurate.
Right.
And with the ridership improvements, this is the first time Manatee County is actually going to exceed 2 million. So
it's partial, the counters, partial, just general overall services of increasing the service and so on and so forth.
more accurate.
Okay. I would think going forward, it will get more and more detailed to be able to pinpoint exactly what's going on. Okay, thank you. And then on your Longboat Key service out there, it says there that in January 2024 is approximately 2,800 trips. Is that what you were expecting? Do you have a benchmark of what you were expecting, or?
It was really unknown,
Okay.
to be honest. It was just an estimated guess with the trips. I mean, we dialed into it, but it was an unknown. This is the first of its kind of a service like this.
Okay, okay. And do you know the cost per ride average?
I think it was 80% for a course per trip. I think it was. I can't. I don't have an exact number, but we do have a contract, and it was like 80% of what.
Maybe you can get that.
Yeah,
That to
I
Dave,
will.
and then he can.
I don't have it.
disseminate
I
out to the board.
apologize.
That would be,
We can distribute that.
okay, that would be interesting information to have. And if there are any benchmarks, or, you know, like you expect to have double that in 6 months, or, I mean, I don't know. Just curious what that would look like. May I?
Yes.
Okay. So you talked about MCAT taking over the Gulf Island Ferry, and I'm curious, this is probably going to be repetitive. Why?
Well, because it's a form of transportation, you know, but Elliot, this is his baby, so I don't know if he wants to let go of his baby pretty soon, but
I think
we're gonna work,
sure.
but we're working closely with Elliot, we're teaming up together, and I assume we're gonna continue on collaborating with this transition.
So you think it would be over several years, this transition?
No,
or just-
I think within maybe 12 months.
Okay. Okay, and then the information about MCAT will implement on-demand service for veterans. How is that planning? How are you planning to get that information out there? I think that's really a lovely service.
We're in the first phases right now, so we had a kickoff meeting with the company Spare, and we got our marketing team in Manatee County working with them. But yes, we do want to showcase this.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Van Ostenbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things, I think both are probably a little in-house, but one is, as you make the transition, it is transportation. The ferry obviously is transportation. However, the level of customer service is different than what has kind of been the standard, I would say. And you just got here, so I'm not going after you or anything. I'm just making sure we understand that we're, while it will become part of MCAT, it is sort of a different brand under the same umbrella, and always be cognizant of that. And number two is kind of a silly question that I'm asked once in a while, and that's, well, why do we call it the 99 line? Why don't we call it the 41 line? The whole thing runs on 41, and that's what everyone thinks of, right? Is there a reason that we call it the 99?
I could honestly, I don't have an answer for that. I know I was here 10 years ago and it was still the Route 90.
The route is 99, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just something for us to think. It would be much less confusing for the general public if we called it the 41 line. Just seems logical, right? Anyway, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll just make a comment for the ferry. When the ferry started, and it's been talked about for 30 years probably, that, it's just going to do it. But finally, this county commission, the city of Bradenton, the TDC stood up and said, let's get it done. We had help from Anna Maria Island. We had help from Bradenton Beach that really showed, and you can see the businesses along there, plus taking the trips off the road. And I think really highlighting how successful this has been is the reason that the TDC and the county were willing to get that second boat that will be able to run on a different level because of weather. When anything's weather related and you have to cancel it, it's important. But I think that this will show that it is transportation ultimately. And we can get Elliot here at one point, even if we wanted to, because he's got all the numbers now, but taking 400 cars off the road a day, and maybe some of those cars wouldn't have even gone to the island. But if you talk to those two streets, Pine and then and Bradenton Beach Bridge, their businesses are thriving even more than they were because they're dropping it off. Anna Maria Oyster Bar, they got people riding it out just to go to there to dinner and then come back. So it's a success. And I think that's something that our region could really benefit from. And, you know, we say Sarasota, Manatee County, it would just, we've seen how successful it is. I think it'll be that successful if we can figure out how to get it to both. And we're making decisions and moving forward. And I think over 30 years, there was some non-decisions made. And we'll even talk about that with our secretary about some transportation in downtown Braden and some road systems that if they would have been done 30 years ago, like they should have, we'd still have traffic, but it would be a third less. Now we'd be working on even more improvements. But we've got to make decisions. And then sometimes you succeed and sometimes you look back and say, wow, maybe we shouldn't have done that. But if you never try, you never can succeed. So I think what you're asking are great questions, and it'll show that, this government, and I say Sarasota Manatee governments now are willing to take that next step to get things done.
Yeah, we also put in some capital grants for some dock improvements as well. So we went for some ferry grants. So hopefully we get that soon too.
But success is a good problem to have when you look at it. So yes, ma'am.
I have a question for you. So cars are cars and they're off the road, and that's a wonderful thing. Is there a breakdown available between tourist cars and people traveling for work or traveling for other regular routine trips?
That's one of the things that is very important as we go forward, because once we have this new boat, they'll be able then to have it. It's going to be about twice as quick, so
Okay.
it's less tourism at times, but they'll be able to work with the business owners on the island and actually get them out there. They're planning on having like a 7 o'clock route, 11 o'clock route that would only be for workers and be free to those workers. So if they can get there in 20 minutes instead of 40 minutes, it may be beneficial to them, and they may be willing to sit there for 20. And then it'll be all up to that. We've talked to a lot of the island businesses that said, you tell us what you want. And then once they tell us what they want, then we'll be able to say, okay, this boat runs at 7 and is only for workers, 11, 3, 9, or whatever it is. But it's going to be about the business owners telling us what they need to do. And I think that would also help Sarasota County when you talk about, those areas.
Certainly. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, just want to elaborate a little bit. Kevin did briefly hit on our on-demand service for veterans. This is going to be a great service for our veterans in Manatee County. It will be for medical appointments only. So some
Okay.
people have asked, is it going to run to the corner bar or store or whatever? No, it is for medical appointments. Because we found that a lot of our veterans can't get to a stop to get on one of the buses. So we thought this was really important to do. We're like Kevin said, we're partnering with an online service where realistically a veteran can have this app on their phone, be able to go on the app and set their appointments out there to be able for the service to pick them up. So we felt this is a very important service for our veterans, the ones especially that can't drive, need to get to their medical appointments and be taken care of. So Kevin, thanks for bringing that up this morning.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's an app-based program. And then, of course, we'll have our customer service assisting them and teaching them how to use the app.
Yeah, and just a final comment while we're going to go to Sarasota County, but I'd like to thank Dave and the staff. And as we talked before I became chairman, we thought that this was so important to try to tie the transportation part of things where when it was early and we weren't having quorums and all of that. So I appreciate everybody moving up to 9 o'clock. This is why we did it. So we could all get information and still have a meeting instead of just not be able to do it there. So just to reiterate, it was a great idea and appreciate it. All right, any other questions? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I don't know if you get this information, but the CRA downtown has a free circulator. Are we getting any information back? Are you getting any of it regarding ridership or who's riding or any of that? Because that is part of the transportation reliever, and all of this seems to go to try to make it a bit more convenient for someone to come to town and not have to get a car. They can use the trolley, they can use the circulator, they can use the water taxi and not be, only walkable. So that's another thing. I don't know how we coordinate that,
Yeah.
but I think incorporating those numbers in with some of the things that you're doing might help too.
I'll look into that.
Mayor Bryant, would you like to give a little update on that?
Yes, excuse me, I would. When they talked about the circulator, they're talking about Freebie is
Oh,
the entity that we're working with. And Bradenton had started that and especially in their CRA district. And so Palmetto has been watching that. Mayor Brown reached out to me to see if that might be something we might be interested in. So we've looked into it, and what we're thinking is it would help Bradenton tremendously. Of course, it would help build up business for a lot of the Palmetto businesses. And in particular, I think there's something of a food desert in downtown Bradenton. So as we have done since we've both been mayor, we're trying to work cooperatively to help both entities, and it's only a mile. So it would actually wind up being that it would circulate between Bradenton's CRA district and Palmetto's CRA district, and the different members of the community would be able to shop in those specific areas. And it's a benefit to the CRA, but it also gets cars off the road, and it allows big assistance to those that are in need of areas to shop for groceries in the central core.
We have no grocery stores in downtown Bradenton. Palmetto has 3 within their CRA. So we do have some people that don't have cars or don't want to get in a car at a certain time. So if we can collaborate with both of those, it's going to be huge for Palmetto. And then even at night, back and forth to the 2 downtown areas that have restaurants and businesses. So we're really working on the transportation to get cars off the road and make things safer.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, ma'am.
Could we step a little further? Something that it kind of came up in some of the different conversations, the possibility of having conferences in the area. There's a Marriott in Bradenton. There's a Marriott just across the bridge in Palmetto, and they could work cooperatively between those 2. And especially it's another enhancement to come to this area. But it keeps you off the roads driving your own vehicles.
Right, and as Councilwoman Coker said, if you want to go to a town and not get a rental car, if you know there's a transportation between the 2 cities, especially with the new Palmetto Marriott, that is going to be a great right next to our convention center, we'll really have a lot of opportunities. Also, one of the boats, once we get the new boat, one of those boats that we have now, will be able to go back and forth across the river. So 30 years ago, when this stuff was talked about, it's happening. And we don't want things to take 30 years anymore. So I appreciate, I know we got to move on to get, but thank you, Kevin.
welcome.
Welcome aboard.
thanks.
All right, we'll move on to the next Sarasota County Breeze Transit Quarterly Report. Megan Liu. Thank you.
All right. If I click it, okay. All right, thank you. So, hi,
Hi.
good morning. My name is Megan Louie. I am the Planning and Performance Manager for Breeze Transit, and I'm here to give you your quarterly update. How we start every presentation is usually ridership info. So this is our ridership for the last 3 fiscal years, with the most current year in the light gray color for FY 2024. Similar to what MCAT presented, is that our current year ridership is up over prior years, which is always what we want to see, that people are utilizing the systems we offer. This data is for our entire system, so it includes the Breeze fixed route buses, on-demand service, and our paratransit, ADA and TD services. Next, if we take that same data and break it down by service type, you'll see that our fixed route service in the light blue makes up the bulk of our ridership. It's around 130,000 in July 2024. Our Siesta Key trolley in purple and our on-demand service in green are both growing and show strong ridership numbers. And then in orange, our Breeze Plus service continues to maintain around 12,000 riders per month. It's the smallest portion of our overall system ridership. Next, I'm going to share some things that we've been working on since we last met in May. So first off, I want to talk about our transit development plan. So late last spring, we started work on our transit development plan, or TDP. And this is an important document that serves as the planning, development, and operational guidance document for the next 10 years of public transit service for the county. It's also a requirement to complete this plan, so that we can be eligible to receive block grant funds. So this past July, the TDP rule was updated by FDOT. And this update was done to try and help better align both the MPO processes of the update of their LRTP along with our TDP, support transit agency and MPO coordination. They've added a metropolitan transportation planning process coordination program as an element of the TDP. And then essentially to help streamline the development of the TDP as well as the annual progress reports. So that's kind of why the rule was updated. Over the past several months, we've been working with our partners at the MPO as well as representatives from each of the jurisdictions and had a couple of public involvement events to try and gather information from the public on what the transportation needs are for the community. Right now, shown on the slide is our TDP webpage, where we have an online survey and an interactive map for the public to kind of give us that feedback of what are they looking for in public transit. So early in the new year, we will be wrapping up our TDP efforts and taking it to the Sarasota County Transportation Authority for approval. And as part of the new rule, we will also be coming here to the MPO board to present the TDP and then final submission to FDOT for their approval. In addition to the TDP efforts, just this last month, we've been working on emergency response as a result of Hurricane Debbie. So as a part of that event, we helped with over 250 evacuations to the temporary shelters for people in need and their pets to get them safely to shelters as well as onto their temporary accommodations when those shelters closed down. Also with our Breeze On Demand service, we offered transportation to the MARC, the Multi-Agency Resource Center, the Disaster Resource Center, and then those state-run comfort stations. So fingers crossed, that's the only emergency response we have this season, but if not, we are ready and poised to help should any other emergencies happen. And then the last thing I wanted to bring
Megan,
up-
I think Vice Chair Nunder wants to say something.
Yes,
Thank you,
of
Mr.
course.
Chair. Megan, I just want to stop real quick. Thank you for the presentation. This slide, I just wanted to take a second and impress upon you how swimmingly well our on-demand worked during Hurricane Debbie. You may or may not know there were, individuals at the shelter that needed relocation from the area on, say, Beneva and Weber all the way down into Northport. Our on-demand service was fantastic in assisting those individuals who happened to be from Ohio. They were here visiting. And so I just want to, say thank you for that. This is very near and dear to me, was at the shelter. You guys did a wonderful job. Jane did a great job. And so I really think that as we see more hurricane events and storms in our future, you guys will be absolutely integral in helping our communities, move people to where they need to go or to shelter. I just wanted to say a big thank you for that and appreciate it immensely.
Thank you, Megan.
Yes. And then lastly, wanted to share an exciting expansion we have coming to our public transportation network with the assistance of a service development grant from FDOT. We will be taking our 77 Siesta Islander, which currently has a on-island circulator off island into downtown Sarasota. We made this change after looking at data from Visit Sarasota on where people are staying and where they're visiting while they're here in Sarasota County. As well as we looked at the current performance of the 77 Siesta Islander route and our seasonal Route 33, and as well as some past fixed route data that connected Siesta to downtown. And the numbers were really there to support this fixed route connection from Siesta to downtown. So by connecting that, we can provide visitors with a public transit service where they don't necessarily need a car when they come to visit. We have a service from the airport that can bring them downtown, whether they're staying in hotels there or continuing on to Siesta, they'll have that network available, as well as any employees that need to make those connections from the mainland to the island that will be available. So the timing for this expansion is that we're currently on track to make this change in the fall. And with that, I am happy to take any questions you might have.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just to stay on that one. So you said the fall, are you talking October, November?
Right now, we're looking at November.
Okay. And do you know the route where it will go from Siesta Key? How many stops in downtown?
Right now, we are working with the city of Sarasota staff to coordinate how there can be overlap between the 77 and the Bay Runner trolley so that riders of those service will know and understand where to make those connections. So we're looking at having the route come up from Siesta and traveling along Main Street and having some overlap between those services. As
So,
well as the.
okay, so it would hit Main Street then?
Mhm,
Okay, and then would it also coordinate with the flyer is what it's
correct.
called?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that if people wanted to go from Siesta Key to the actual airport, they could.
They could make that connection.
Connection.
downtown. Yep.
Okay, and my other question was on your emergency response. You mentioned the three places that you took folks to. Do you have an idea of where they were picked up, like a general area? Is that something we could identify as, I don't know, a hot spot or something? We get another Debbie?
Yeah, I don't have that data with me right now, but I can certainly go back to my team and see if there is any clustering of where those trips started and ended.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It might be prudent or helpful to talk with our county engineer in Spencer. Certainly, I know we've been inundated with requests, emails about flooding, continued water that hasn't receded quite yet. Spencer is obviously on that and would have probably the best information as to be more proactive, to your point, and maybe get ahead of the curve as future rain events might come, as we might see one here in the very near future. So that synergy, that decusation, crossing borders, whether it's government, staff, doing a better job in predicting how we can help our community. And like I said, Megan, your on-demand service when I was at the shelter or the evacuation, it was wonderful. I mean, people were so appreciative and you guys went above and beyond. You brought a bus. So thank you for that. I just think that those are the type of things that separate, us here in Manatee County, I call it, Chair, from the rest of the state. We do things exceedingly well. We're proactive and we have a lot of really good communication. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'll just make a final comment. And I think it shows, with communication, with collaboration, everything that we're doing in the two counties. We have our own counties and we have our rivalries at times, but we also work together when it comes down to the point of what's best for the citizens. And I think that, we're looking at different transportation methods, different ways, with the water taxis to really show that we can collaborate. And I think sometimes you have to put all the other stuff behind you and make sure that we're working together. And just talking about, this transportation there, it still plays in from the airport. So when I'm coming to an area, if I don't need to rent a car, and especially how expensive they've got, that if I don't need to rent a car, but I feel comfortable, whether it's through the transit, whether it's through any other options that an individual city, county has, they know, well, I can go to both counties and there's 10 different ways I can travel and I don't have to rent that car. And that helps our secretary with a lot of other things in the future. So I appreciate that and we will move on. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you for your time.
Yep. All right, next we have agenda item number 6. Or is it 5? Oh, did I miss one? Oh, yeah. Oh. Okay.
It should
5,
be,
but
it should be
It
5.
says 6 on my reading point. So number 5, first is the Florida Department of Transportation, LK Nadam, District 1 Secretary. And first, I'd like to say thank you for spending time in down south with us for the Manatee Chamber and giving a great update for our whole region. So thank you.
Very welcome, Chair. It was a pleasure to come down and spend time with the group. As far as the FDOT update goes, I want to first say I'm really glad to see the success of water taxi in this region. If you remember, we did a study a few years ago, which is a Barrier Island traffic study, right? And one of the recommendations that came out was for the local partners, our local partners, to pursue the water taxi as an alternative. And really appreciate you guys pursuing that and implementing that and expanding it. So that's going to make a big difference as it relates to providing that alternate choice, right? I do want to say very appreciative of both the transit agencies, MCAT and Breeze, for aligning their TDP with the LRTP update. This was a District 1 initiative through our congestion management multimodal plan that we are working on. That was a recommendation we gave to Dave and to our transit agencies. And pretty much all of our MPOs and transit agencies in District 1 are doing that, which is going to make a big difference to align the needs that are identified in the LRTP with the operational goals in the TDP, right? Because we've been so successful here in our district, now it's become a statewide standard to align all the LRTPs with the TDPs. So it's a great success story. So appreciate our local partners working with us. So as far as the department update goes, we have been working on our program planning. So every year, as we build our budget, we start the conversation identifying what funding levels we need to allocate towards statewide needs, which includes the maintenance, safety programs, how much money we need to allocate towards resurfacing to meet the statutory goals, and how much money we need to allocate towards the statutory programs, which includes transit allocations, right? So they've done that. And we recently got our allocations, revenue allocations. And the news is that we're going to have about $160 million less of a revenue over the next 10 years. It's not a big hit to our program, but it kind of sends a message that the revenues are not growing as they used to. They're kind of like flattening, right? So that kind of drives the importance of, one, looking for alternate sources for funding into transportation, right? So that we can meet the demands onto providing the right infrastructure for everybody moving to the state, all the visitors and the residents in our region. But also brings in the point that I made at the chamber is as the conversations about the reauthorization starts, trying to drive the message to our policymakers at the federal level before they start making up their mind on the importance of allocating funding based on formula instead of putting majority of the money into grant programs. If you remember when IIJA was passed, the federal reauthorization was passed, there was a big chunk of money. It was a record investment into transportation. So we all celebrated about that, right? But there was a big chunk, close to $170 billion that were put into the grant programs. And it turned out that the grant programs are not that efficient and the money is not being spent at the rate it's supposed to be spent. And then they're not being distributed by, according to fair share, right? Because it's all judgment-based allocation to the applications that they receive, right? So we have a very good planning process. It's a federally mandated planning process. We go through the long-range transportation plan updates every 5 years, and it's built bottoms up based on community input, and the priorities are defined based on needs of the local communities, right? So if we get formula allocations, and if the majority of the funding that's being passed through the reauthorization is allocated through formula programs, then we'll have more opportunities both at the department, at the MPO, to accomplish those local priorities. So the reason I'm going through the spiel is you guys are our policy makers, right? You need to have those conversations with your federal delegation to make sure that this next reauthorization will have formula-based allocations. So that's pretty much what I have, Mr. Chair. I'll take any questions if you may have.
Okay, any questions? Yes, ma'am. Microphone.
Just one quick one. Okay, I couldn't understand what you were saying about what kind of allocations. I couldn't understand the word you said.
So federal formula-based, yes. So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I want to add one more statement.
Yes.
So when you talk about formula-based allocations, Mayor, it's when funding is allocated at the nationwide level, right? Each state gets a proportion, right? That proportion is defined based on population numbers and number of lane miles on the national highway system that we have, right? And each state has. And then on top of it, amount of gas that is pumped at the gas stations, right? The fuel. So those are the three that are taken into account when they calculate how much allocation that each state gets. And obviously, Florida has been a donor state, right? Because we actually have higher population, a lot of lane miles, and we have a lot of fuel sales, right? So we've been a donor state. If we go into majority formula allocation based, revenue that's given to the states, then I think the state is going to win. That's what it is. That's why I'm driving that point.
Yes, sir. Mr. Turner.
Okay, with the predictions, I mean, I know with the gasoline tax, the prediction is going to be reduced because of the use of electric. Mike, but with the population growth, does that not offset it? Because the prediction for population growth is pretty significant. So if the use of gasoline is, what are your thoughts about that?
So, one point is the adoption of electric vehicles has not been as aggressive as projections were, right? I think the amount of fuel that's being pumped at the gas stations has been reducing because of the fuel efficiency of the vehicles that are being sold. So we are seeing a lot more fuel efficient vehicles, and then we're also seeing hybrid vehicles coming in, right? So more so the electric vehicles, those two categories are actually putting a dent into the amount of fuel tax that is being collected. Even with the population increase, if you look at a nationwide level, right, obviously people are moving from one state to the other, right? So the population increase at the nationwide level is not generating as much fuel that's collected. However, because the number of people that are moving into the state is increasing, we could get more proportion of that overall collection.
But that proportion is not guaranteed then. So it's more of a national scale. And so it's not necessarily state level. So on population.
Yes.
Okay.
However, if our population increases, we get more proportion. That's what it is.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? No. I did want to just make a couple of comments and maybe a couple of asks of Mr. Secretary. I know you did have a question about some of our construction in the areas, and I think it's all over. I didn't know if there was a possibility, and obviously the one in Manatee County, Manatee Avenue, if there was a way that you could maybe write a letter stating kind of the facts that are going on. And there may be some areas in other that seems like they're taking longer than they should. And maybe if we could do something specific to some projects that would help us to kind of get out, because, citizens don't understand that is it a city road, a county road, or a DOT road. But when a DOT project, the week of Thanksgiving tears up one lane, the week of Christmas tears up another lane, and it's still sitting today, and they're playing whack-a-mole with manhole covers because the lanes are down. They think it's in that jurisdiction. So maybe we can talk a little bit and get some of that information. And then, we all don't take everything for gospel on Nextdoor and Facebook, but it gets traction. And we saw that with this past storm in both counties where people said stuff that just wasn't true. But if you don't answer it or try to get ahead of some of it, it does affect all of us in ways that, we want the facts out there. We want the transportation successes. We want everything to get out, but we also just want that to be shared properly.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, if there is a project like the one that you mentioned there is a perception of delays, right? It may be a reality or it may not be based on the schedules of the project, right? The way it is laid out. So obviously we got to do a good job of informing public about, what are the next steps. So at the start of the project and throughout the project, right? What I would offer is if a community has concerns about any construction project and has questions about the progress of the project, I could actually come to, not me, my project team could actually come to your council meetings or commission meetings, and they could talk about that specific project, right? So, as an example, the resurfacing project on Manatee Avenue, we have supply chain issues with signals, right? So the way resurfacing projects work is first they mill the pavement and then they work on the signals and then they come back and redo the pavement. But so it seems like there's not much work going on while they're working on the signals because it's work here, work there, right, on multiple locations. But if you know that information, right, so you could actually inform your citizens. So we can come to the commission meetings and address those concerns.
Good. And I think on this project, it's probably about more they milled the outside lanes, didn't mill the inside lanes. If they'd have milled the whole thing and then it looked like something was happening. But unfortunately, there's been long delays of anything. And this project was started end of the year and be done by June. Now we're in almost October and nothing, it doesn't look like anything's getting done, but I think we just need to get that out there. And in a way that you do share. And like I said, sometimes on these media sites that think they put propaganda out there and false rumors, and a rumor they heard, but it was only unsubstantiated, catches traction.
Yes.
And if you don't answer it, then they don't think that you're paying attention. And I mean, I've seen it in both counties with the flooding, with other things that have happened, that you've just got to try to stay ahead. And this government is closest to the people. So we want to keep that, to be part of the communities. And that's important because like you said, if they got the information, then people live with it. But if all they see is propaganda, they don't know what to do. But, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nandam, as you had mentioned, going back to the other topic about the formula based allocations, I am on the Florida League of Cities FAST committee, so we go several times a year to DC, advocate on behalf of the league, but at the same time, we can also set appointments with our other representatives up there for other topics. If you could, when that gets closer for me, if you could get me some detailed information so that I could tell a more complete story, I would appreciate that, and maybe circulate it to others who advocate in the same way through their various agencies. That would be very helpful. I would appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
That's a great idea. So what we'll do, we have a position paper that we prepared as something that we would like to use in conversations for state of Florida. So we'll send that copy to Dave so he can distribute it to the board.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our Vice Chair MPOAC report.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I may, Pam has got.
Oh, okay.
Dates.
Pam's got-
Sorry.
Morning, I'm Pam Barr. I'm the community liaison for Sarasota Manatee. To piggyback a little bit, you were talking about having a chance to say the things that are needed and that you need help with. We currently in 2025, the Florida Transportation Plan Regional Workshop is going to be on this Thursday, September 26th at 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. It will be held at the Venice Community Center on Nokomis Avenue. It's an FDOT initiated update on the Florida Transportation Plan to develop Florida statewide plan guiding the transportation future. The community engagement is a critical part of the FTP, which is the Florida Transportation Plan development, to ensure that the needs are met for each of the Florida residents, visitors, and all the users of the transportation system. So if you have things that need to be stated, this would be a good opportunity to attend this workshop to find out how to make sure that those things get entered into that plan.
Thank you.
What's the date again? Repeat the
It's
date.
this Thursday at 2:30 in Nokomis.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Secretary? Good.
No, Mr. Chair. Thank you for yielding time.
Appreciate you. Yes, okay. Vice Chair.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will be giving an MPOAC report this morning. Our last meeting was held in conjunction with the Floridians for Better Transportation. at the annual summer camp that was July 24th through the 26th, that Dave and I did get to attend with some staff members at Palm Beach Gardens. We had MPOs from throughout Florida. We met and were updated on the organization and very specifically dialing in on the strategic plan for the organization. There was some pretty good conversation, a lot of thoughts there. Assistant Secretary Kim Holland spoke from FDOT, updating on the FTP plan and the importance of all of our MPOs, both locally here and throughout the state, and FDOT working together in unison. The U.S. Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration presented on their current initiatives, implementation and funding opportunities for us. There was some discussion on potential legislation in the upcoming session that once again may propose some challenges for the MPOAC. I think we're all aware that last session there was some conversation about eliminating the MPOAC. Individuals there are aware of it, they're cognizant of it. I think there's value in the synergy that happens when these MPOs as a collective meet statewide. Whether or not that will happen under the MPOAC or perhaps just individually at times remains to be seen. And then what steps needed to be taken in order to maintain those relationships and coordinate planning activities, should that happen. Our next round of meetings is October 24th in Orlando. We're going to be having freight and passenger rail committee meetings, our executive committee meeting, and the directory's advisory committee meeting, along with the MPOAC governing board. I'm sure at that time we'll have some more conversation about what could happen potentially session beginning in March, I believe this year, right? Is that's when it begins. Looks like our topics are going to be included, but not limited to statutory requirements, documenting regional coordination among the MPOs, and consistency with the Florida Transportation Plan. I think this will be a great working meeting, Dave. I believe we're going to get a lot of qualitative data at that time. That will be somewhat more substantive, I'm hearing, to bring back to this board. David, it was a great time. Learned a lot. I got to take the training. It was a training session. I don't know the exact vernacular there, but I found it very useful and very informative. And it's always great. Dave does a wonderful job representing us with the MPOAC, and certainly is a great man to hang out with as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Vice Chair? And again, I'd like to thank Joe for really taking on that responsibility and doing that and doing it very well. So thank you.
It's very eye-opening, if I can be honestly, Chair. It's very eye-opening, and I'm happy to do it as long as this board wants me to do it. But I don't know if there's any collaboration, Dave, where other members have an opportunity to go. I think there is tremendous value in seeing what happens without other MPOs throughout the state. Kind of being able to ask questions, pick brains. Chair, everybody there is extremely knowledgeable, very friendly, and it's a great environment. So I'm appreciative to attend if you want me to.
And pretty much it'll be your choice.
Oh,
It's that
okay,
coming
good,
up as
good.
the incoming
Okay.
chairman.
All right.
You pick it.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you. And next we have Dave Hutchinson, who will give the MPO Executive Director report, which includes the draft 2025 Sarasota Manatee MPO schedule and the project priority tracker.
Thank you, Chair Brown. You have at your place the calendar for 2025. It will distribute it without draft on it in November. So please take it back. We think we've avoided better than this year conflicts with the city of Sarasota and their meeting schedule. There might be one, I believe, next year where there's still a conflict because of the way holidays fall. The other item that is something that we are trying, and I thought that you all might appreciate, is our priority project tracker. And it's a performance measure that doesn't have a mandated format for reporting. So we invented one, and it kind of gives you at a glance the status of some of our priorities. And you can see at the top, we have a couple that are delayed and having some scheduling challenges, which could affect the funding that's either allocated to those projects, might get reallocated to other projects because they will not keep rolling it forward. because that counts against FDOT. So they have to spend it within a certain period. We want them to spend it on your adopted priorities, and we'll work with them to try to keep projects on track as much as possible. And we've been working with the jurisdictions involved too. In this case, you see 15th Street East and a significant sidewalk lighting project on US 41 that connects to a series of other safety projects. And 15th Street East, the county was told a year ago they had to take over that project. So they're working on the details for how that will work. And the US 41 project, which is significant, over 2+ miles, involved some utilities that could affect, you don't want to put in a brand new sidewalk and then come back in and dig it up. So that's being worked through as well. And FDOT will likely be taking that project back, it sounds like. You have a couple of orange projects where, if these aren't going to be able to get funding due to very expensive right of way, they're on our list, but they may or may not truly be viable. A couple of yellow projects are working. They just need some additional coordination. They're moving along, and the green are on track, no problem. So it gives you an at a glance look at some of the priorities that are underway.
And Dave, I want to thank you on that, because when we met last week, they really did a great job at adjusting, because the jurisdictional part of it wasn't there as much of an explanation. And I think it's easier for all of us to kind of find it when you have to guess a roadway, where once that put in there, it's easy for all of us to look at what's in our areas. So I appreciate you guys, the staff and everybody, getting that updated to make it a little more customer friendly to us.
Great. A couple of other quick items. I just wanted to recognize Keith Green, who is listed on the consent agenda as an appointee to our Citizens Advisory Committee representing Manatee County Unincorporated. Mr. Green, welcome. And I wanted to introduce our newest staff member, Nick Chiavani. And he may have introduced himself to you already.
Yes.
Fresh out of Florida State University.
Oh, yes, sir.
He hasn't, I don't know anything about him. I'd love to have him get up and give us
Everything you need to know.
Put him on the spot.
Don't listen to him.
He was clearly integral in the football program, and without him, things aren't going well.
Exactly. Also, anyway, welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
Wanted to recognize our longest serving staff member, Nanette, 23 years with the MPO. Wow. We have kind of another staff member, Lindsay Heinrich, just delivered a baby boy about 3 weeks early, doing well. One last item, well, the Florida Transportation Plan meeting was mentioned Thursday. That's also was in your Tuesday Transportation Talk newsletter that that Grace sends out. You should all be receiving that. I might have mentioned the fact that when we moved into our current office space around 6 years ago, the landlord, the owners were not using the building except for their own airplane. They've sold the building. The new owners have a maintenance operation that they are in the process of ramping up. So all of that parking that was available is getting used by their employees and customers. And so we have been working with Manatee County Property Management to find potential office space, and we do have a potential location that if all goes well, it'll be coming back to the board to approve the lease agreement, go to Manatee County also as the agent that pays our bills. And that is located out between Fruitville and University Parkway, not too far from some of the Sarasota County buildings north of Fruitville. And it is an area that, should be convenient. It's within a couple of miles of the interstate and should be big enough, we hope, to hold our board meetings. If that gets executed, and, still it has to be modified. So we're looking at early to mid next year. Wanted to give you that update. Thank you.
Any questions for Dave? Yes, ma'am.
Like to Dave, on the schedule for next year, I see two conflicts with the city of Sarasota.
Okay.
I believe May is on the third Monday, and then October is also on the third Monday. So we meet first and third Monday of the month. I can make a suggestion again that at those 2 dates, our city commission start later. I can see how that goes, but it wasn't successful the last time.
That would be great. And now, if we went to a fourth Tuesday, I think we have conflicts with both counties. And that's why we didn't try to, and we don't want to meet on a holiday, I don't think. And so we'll take a look at those. And it may be that twice a year there is a conflict. It would be great if the city could start just a little bit later, and so that you would have representation here.
Yes, I think it's important. And then my other question had to do with your project tracker. For the city of Sarasota, the Ringling Boulevard Main Street roundabout, and it says placeholder, what is the viability of the project funding ? And it's an orange, potential issues. Is the viability of it being questioned?
I think
or?
it's was never intended to receive a lot of federal money and the right-of-way estimates were quite high, up into the tens of millions of dollars, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'll just add, we've been working with the department on a number of these projects, including MLK and Myrtle, as well as Ringling in Maine. Yes, we've incurred substantial costs on our end. I would say the MPO is far beyond what our value into some of these. We help with Ringling and Pine as well, using MPO funds. So we've been working with the department on best path forward on some of these. So some of these we don't have currently a best path forward, given the return on what the potential investment is on some of those. So there are challenges that are still there to be kind of discussed and maybe potentially overcome. But we do not have a path forward for the next phase of Ringling in Maine at this point, using the funds that we have projected this time.
And Myrtle and MLK?
That one I believe is moving forward.
Okay.
It once again, refining exactly what we're going to do on the right-of-way phase and where those funds are going to come from. The MPO is in as well on a number of other projects related to the next phases for specifically Ringling in Maine, what we're going to do with the right-of-way phase there. So we're still working with the department on
Okay.
those. Yep.
And, I think the one for Myrtle and MLK is really, really
Yeah.
important to continue that roundabout,
Yeah, absolutely.
saying that people all of a sudden slow down when they hit the first one and continue to slow down as they enter the city. I think it's really important for the overall philosophy.
We fully agree that the design of that had occurred years and years ago.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that we've posed the question to the department as well. If these remain on our priority list, we want to make sure we're delivering those. So what is the issue? That's why we're bringing it to the attention. Why are we waiting on projects 4, 5, 6 years? Is there a reason why? So we're digging into those as to what the issue is. And if it's not feasible to overcome, we need to come out and say, what is the issue and what can we do to kind of alleviate that, or say it's just not buildable with the revenue that we have projected.
And the issue is revenue projections are not increasing at anywhere near the rate of project costs. And that's true everywhere, probably.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chair, Dave made his statement is accurate, right? In that the amount of money that's coming into the district and the amount of money that we need to spend on preservation is pretty much eating up our revenues, right? So unless there is a different source of revenue that could come in, we cannot make these projects happen at least for the next 5 years. Hopefully the market trend will, start taking a turn the other way where the estimates are coming lower and the need for our resurfacing of our facilities is going to reduce. It's going to kind of like normalize so that we get a little bit cushion to pursue these kind of projects. The presentation to the Manatee Chamber talked about our resurfacing program, and we are resurfacing about 400 lane miles. Actually, I'm sorry, 300 lane miles in Manatee County alone. Okay, off the 500. So that's like 60% of the lane miles that we are resurfacing. And that's the entire district is like that. So our revenues that are coming in pretty much is consumed by resurfacing projects.
Thank you. And I think one of the things obviously when you get a report like this with the project tracker, you look at your eyes are drawn to the negative a little bit more, but you really got to look at also, some of the positives that are happening out of it. There's more greens and some yellows that we can probably get fixed pretty easy. You just got to make sure and track them. And then some projects just aren't viable. We got to move on.
And that's a great point, Chair Brown. The Florida Department of Transportation has in our two counties alone, literally tens of millions of dollars worth of projects underway right now. And it's not just on I-75, these resurfacing projects, some we've been kind of waiting for. You look at the roads around the state and we have a lot of traffic. And so resurfacing is a huge expense, and they've got a commitment in the statute that says they have to do it at a certain level. And it's based on miles, which sometimes, you wonder, why are they doing it out in the country versus in our urban area where it's much more expensive to maintain traffic flows and it's much more disruptive as well. So, but anyway, I think they do a good job, but it's a challenging job, and we get caught because some of our projects that we thought would be funded have not been. And
over the last 4 years, we've seen the increase in right-of-way and cost of projects, which nobody anticipated 4 years ago.
Right. But overall, there's a lot going on, and
besides
we're
that
get
part
the
of
benefit.
it, we're getting
right.
it. So, right. All right. Thank you. Anything else, Dave?
That's it.
All right. Moving forward, I'll do the chair's report. First off, I don't think there's anybody visiting today. Is there? The board members here. Everybody the same. Do we have any elected officials in the audience? I didn't see anybody that I know. I do want to just introduce one person. We've got Colonel Irv Lee, which is our new Public Works Director for the city of Bradenton. And he had a 100-day plan that I think turned into a 200-day plan because of the storms and everything else. And I told him, I said, just keep that going. But we'll be all right. And we're doing a great job with a lot of our public works and obviously transportation and going through all of those things. So thank you for being here today, Colonel. All right, moving forward, and we've talked about this a little bit. It's going to be obviously later in the report from DOT on the Braden and Palmetto connector and going through the ACE studies and project development, the PD&E. And, for decades, this corridor has been among the worst congested in the region. And the reason we say the region is because when you look at the number of people that are trying to get maybe from North Pinellas to Sarasota even, it's not just, Manatee County, it's also getting people there. We have an interstate corridor that runs through there that a lot of the people that live and maybe come from the Skyway Bridge area don't want to go all the way out to the interstate because of the congestion. So they try to come through Bradenton, and we have the two bridges. And I always say, we have 30 years ago when the third bridge got killed, it really set us back a generation or two. And we've really got to work to get this better. And with the MPO's help, it's one of the highest priorities for state and federal. You're going through, it's the congestion management process update, which we heard about at our last meeting and is on consent agenda today. But we reiterate the need for additional capacity in that corridor to basically get them moved from north to south and then south to north. And when you live downtown, you see it on the bridges. And we had an accident the other day. It's about a 6 or 7 car pileup on the DeSoto Bridge with a concrete truck. Thank goodness there was no major injuries, but it gridlocked us it happened around, I think, 1 o'clock. Well, happens at 1 o'clock, you're gridlocked till late into the evening. Ambulances, I think one had to go to the interstate to come back to get to the other side. And I know it's something Mayor Bryant has really, talked about over all the years. Now we're lucky that some of our medical hospitals and different things are building these little ERs that can help save people's lives. And we're not worried about an ambulance on a traffic congestion, but as we grow, this is vital to our future. And as the ACE study and PD&E move forward, I trust our partners at DOT, which is a great partnership, will remain committed to building the needed infrastructure and as quickly as possible. We know a major project, once they decide where it's going to go, is still years in the making, but it's a matter of still making a decision and then moving forward. And sometimes those decisions are tough. And I wish 30 years ago they would have made that tough situation, because we would still be talking about this, but it would be a matter of talking about what's the next part of it to make it better. So it's very important that we stay committed as a community, which helps all of us. And like I said, I always hate talking about just something in Bradenton, Manatee County, but this really is a regional transportation issue that's going to help both counties to get people north and south, and then speed up our downtown east and west. Because if we say 35–40% of that traffic doesn't want to be there, if somehow we can get them up and out, then that moves 35 to 40% quicker east and west. So it's one of the, I think, generationally, when we all look back on it, and hopefully some of us are still here to see the completion of it. And I say here on earth, because the way things take, sometimes they take that 20 to 30 years to get done. But in the 90s, if they would have done the project, it would have probably got done by 2012, 2014, somewhere in that neighborhood. So let's really make this a focus of the transportation part. We're doing all the little things that we can to help. The water tax, and I don't want to say that's a little thing, but it's a cog in the wheel. Just keep it going. Let's keep it going. But I appreciate everything. I know this isn't my last meeting, but it's getting close. So we'll bring Joe in and let it keep going. It goes by fast. So, and yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
As all along, I've been very concerned about this corridor, and we, of course, we can't talk about the specifics together, but people forget that it's an evacuation corridor as well. I'm surprised that other people, when you say regionally, I mean regionally, have not really jumped on this and pushed it, and gotten behind us more to make change happen, because it doesn't affect one person. It affects more and more. I mean, what's Manatee County at, 400,000, whatever? It impacts a lot of people, and they really need to keep their eye on the ball and encourage this and support us when decisions are made and recommendations are made from the different professionals that are working here and working together. Get behind them and support them for the future, because it's the health, safety, and welfare of our community. We have an urgent care facility in Palmetto now, an emergency center, but it's like Mayor Brown said, that's not enough. There's a lot of people that would be left out in the cold, so to speak, and this needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And furthermore, the interchange just to the north of 41 or 301, we need to keep our eyes on that, because it's going to be insufficient. It's already obsolete by our own standards, the state standards. So there's a lot that needs to be happening and planning for in the very, very near future. So I would ask the community at large to celebrate and collaborate with your representatives, come forward and support change. It hurts a little bit, but not as bad as doing nothing. So I would totally support what Mayor Brown has said.
And I think when you look at what we didn't do 30 years ago is really hurting now. And so that's important that we keep selling to the community. And we see a lot of it now where people are saying, hey, we got to do something. We know we're going to have the DeSoto Bridge replacement, while in conjunction with really working through all these studies and going through. And and they have eliminated some of the areas that will be coming out. And hopefully by the first of the year, we'll have more information from DOT, as a great partner with us and really making it happen. So any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move forward to item number 6, consent agenda. Mr. Hutchinson will read the title of each item for the record.
Thank you. Sarasota Manatee MPO Board Meeting Minutes of May 20th, 2024. Sarasota Manatee MPO Committee Appointments, reappointment. Updates to the Sarasota Manatee MPO policies. Those are the internal policies, and a lot of clerical type modifications and a few others that are spelled out in the agenda package. Congestion Management Process CMP Final Report. So all of these studies that are on the consent agenda, you've heard at least twice, and these latest final versions incorporate comments from both the board and technical advisory committee. So they're pretty much what you heard before, incorporating your comments. The fiscal year 2022, 2023 through 23-24 Unified Planning Work Program closeout, which is the end of the last budget document, and the first amendment to the current fiscal year 2024-25 through 2025-26 Unified Planning Work Program. Also, Long Range Transportation Plan Resiliency Study Phase 2 final report. Long Range Transportation Plan Cost Feasible Plan modifications, referencing some improvements on State Road 72 and US 301. Also, Transportation Improvement Program tip modifications, referencing I-75 and I-275 resurfacing. And last but not least, the Destination Zero Implementation Safety Education final report.
All right, do I have a motion to approve items A through J on the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I just wanted to state for the record that I did submit some non-substantive corrections to the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so as submitted.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, is there any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I just want to thank the board and thank MPO and also thank Clark from Manatee County as well. The 301 work study falls in line with the comments that you and Mayor Bryant made earlier about looking forward, looking beyond when we'll be here. Hopefully I'm still here. Looking beyond when we're on the earth, possibly in future generations. And that 301 study is one of those things. That's a north-south arterial that's crucial to the county. And you spoke about the Green Bridge. This is when the Green Bridge project is finished. What is it going to look like going forward from that point? Because once people are through downtown Bradenton, they still have to continue on.
Right.
And making 301 limited access is something that, future generations are going to appreciate and hopefully will accomplish. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Commissioner. All right, moving on to action items. First is item under Transportation Improvement Plan. The tip is the 7AI fiscal year 2024, 2025 through 28, 29 tip amendments presented by Mrs. Barr. Welcome again.
Again?
Yep.
Yes. So FDOT is requesting an amendment for the Sarasota Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization's tip for 24, 25 and 20 through 28, 29. This is for a resurfacing project. It's project number 444612-1. It's US 41 north of Edward Drive to north of Magellan Drive. We're adding funds of $2,769,970. A lot of funding was changed. So there was some funding that was removed and then was replaced with other funding. This is for a construction project that will be taking place in fiscal year 2026.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Thank you. Do we have this does require a vote by show of hands. We have a motion to approve the FY 2024-25 through 2028 2029 Transportation Improvement Amendments. Okay, there's second? All right. All right, we have a motion by Mayor Bryant, a second by Vice Chair Nunder. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. All right. Was there anybody not raising their hand? Unanimous? All right, I couldn't see everybody. Thank you. Moving forward to do the tip roll forward by Ms. Barr again. Thank you.
Okay, this is an annual occurrence. There's a 3-month gap between the state fiscal year and the federal fiscal year. And so between that gap, there's any of the four, if there's a project during those months that's needs to be federally recognized so that it can be authorized for payments, we need to roll forward the funds from the previous fiscal year into the new federal fiscal year. So you should have received a document with all the various programs. This is not something that the state really wants to do. So the fewer projects we're rolling forward, the better off we are. That means those projects were completed in the proper time period. These are projects that didn't get completed that need to have the funds rolled forward.
Okay, so this will also require a show of hands. So do I have a motion to approve the FY 24-25 through 28-29 Transportation Improvement Plan amendments?
Motion to approve.
All right. All right, Commissioner Turner, Mayor Bryant. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all please raise your hand. Unanimous, thank you. All right, now we'll move forward to 7B, 2025 policy priorities with Ryan Brown. Thank you, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Brown. And yes, this is also kind of an annual item prior to our upcoming legislative session. We like to bring back to you. It used to be called legislative priorities, but as an MPO, we try not to state too much legislative. We rely on you, and this is what these agendas do. Dave and I are try to attend your legislative meetings at least once a year when you have them, they come to town. So what we try to do is present you with this kind of simple list of items that we think are beneficial to the transportation agenda in our region. Really only one major change from the prior year, and that's with regards to the last item under transportation projects. It refers to planning and implementing state funded capacity and multimodal improvements. As Commissioner Van Ostenbridge mentioned, 301's on here, as well as State Road 72 and 789. These major corridors certainly have a substantial impact on our regional transportation system. And we want to make sure that we're emphasizing that to our state legislators as well. We know you're all aware of the importance of these roadways, but we want to make sure that our agenda is aligned with that, as well as with our upcoming LRTP update, that these projects will be considered and revenue will be dedicated to account for the improvements needed on these roadways. The rest of them are under transportation funding, or more general topics that refer to making sure transportation funds are used for transportation efforts alone. There is a limited budget and limited revenue. Want to make sure that those funds that are being set aside for transportation are being used for those reasons. So really with that, there's not too many other changes. Obviously, number one still remains Bradenton Palmetto Connector, as we've talked about a lot today already and in previous meetings. That still remains our number one priority. And I will add that Dave and myself, when we've worked closely with the department, that we've agreed to step up and help fund the PD&E in the upcoming year for the Bradenton Palmetto Connector to continue moving that priority forward. So we are working through our policy list and the things that we are doing and presenting. We want to make sure that we're standing by that and the work that we're doing reflects this agenda. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
And
Let's get a motion to approve the 2025 Sarasota Manatee policy priorities, and we'll have discussion. You make the motion? Yeah, all right, second. All right, discussion, yes, sir.
Mayor.
Discussion. Oh, David, okay.
Thank you. I have one suggestion sort of on the fly, and that is to add the sentence under the transportation funding where we talk about equitable funding allocations, and it's just add support formula funding over discretionary grant programs. That's consistent with what Secretary Nanum recommended. It's sort of implicit in what we had here before, but that makes it very clear to our federal funders that the just the formula funding is what benefits our area the most.
Yep, so the motioner will accept that.
Yes, sir.
And second, all right, we'll do that. Any other discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, carries unanimously. I just have one comment for, I think, and I'll take it from the city of Bradenton standpoint. You know, we've really got to work a little bit better because we did go after some funds that might have changed. I think we all go after our own funding at times, but when we want to work together and working with LK, we've had several meetings through, you know, the secretary in his office and going through things to say, we're not trying to take money away from that. We were just trying to get some other stuff done that we got the money, we could get it done quicker, but realizing, you know, we didn't mean to step on any toes that way, but now we know how to kind of process through things. So I think that's a good, if you have questions or you want to go after some of that transportation money, basically all they're going to do is take it from one fund to another if you get it. But my thought was at that point was we could get it a little quicker, not realizing it could hurt other processes. I think that's something we learned to, you know, because we're a little bit more aggressive in the city of Bradenton now than we've been in the past. Thank you. And thank you, LK, for working with us on that. All right. I guess the next, thank you, Ryan. I think that's it for you now. Usually you just go, but now you got a break in between. So.
We got some final reports. We figured we'd bring our consulting teams.
Next is 7C Active Transportation Plan update, final report from Jennifer Musselman, Kittleson and Associates.
Yep. So I'll just do a brief intro.
Okay.
As you approved on our consent agenda, you'd seen those presentations twice before already, and we made some final adjustments to those. The two that you'll see from us now are the Active Transportation Plan and then LECOM following. These are 5 of the ongoing studies we've had going on over the last 2 years. And with us here today, as you mentioned, is Jennifer from Kittleson and Associates, one of our general planning consultants, and she'll provide you with the final update on our Active Transportation Plan. And we'll happily take any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Jennifer Musselman from Kittleson, as Ryan mentioned, here today to present the draft final report for the Active Transportation Plan. So many of you may remember that this plan was initially created in 2019, feeding into the 2045 Long-Range Transportation Plan. So as we're preparing for the 2050 Long-Range Plan, updating the Active Transportation Plan as well. The vision of the plan remains the same from the original 2019 to improve walking, biking, and access to transit to provide safe and connected trips across the 2-county region. The goals are also the same from the 2019 plan, but just a refresher. The first, of course, is to improve safety for people walking, biking, and taking the bus. The second, to increase the number of those trips that are happening. The third, to promote equity in the transportation planning process. And then the fourth, to create that safe, comfortable, and connected network across the region. The main product of the Active Transportation Plan is the Vision Network. So here you see the Vision Network from the 2019 plan. The red or pink color is the Sun Trail, which serves as a spine throughout the region. And then the blue are routes building off of that to create more connections within the individual communities.
And of course, the Sun Trail does connect further north and further south than is shown on the map.
Right. Thanks, Dave. So starting with that 2019 network, we had conversations with a lot of your staff from the different communities about the plans that they have completed in the last 5 years. We also took a look at where facilities have been built and constructed in the last several years, looking at the level of traffic stress or how safe and comfortable people are feeling on streets today. And then took a look at some new activity centers. So some places that emerged that were not necessarily popping up in the last plan were Ellington, Englewood, and then West Village, which we know is developing quite rapidly. So took a look at, you can see here, the orange are routes from the last plan. The blue are new routes with a lot of focus you can see east of I-75 and making more connections in that area. And then pink are routes that were removed this year, either because there's a parallel facility that worked better or a local plan is no longer prioritizing that connection. So this is an example of one of those routes that was removed in place of an alternate. So the MPO did a couple of SunTrail studies in the last couple of years. One of those focused on the State Road 64 Manatee Avenue corridor. As part of that study, there was a recommendation to shift the SunTrail route south to 11th Avenue West. And so you see this segment of State Road 64 Manatee Avenue coming off, 11th Avenue being added parallel to still provide good connectivity, but with a route that's a little bit more comfortable today. From the Vision Network, we took a look at all of the gaps, the ones that aren't quite comfortable as we want them to be, and applied the MPO's prioritization criteria to see which are most likely to pop up for funding. And so identified about 10 of each type of project: SunTrail, bicycle, and pedestrian, as you can see here on the map. For each of those corridors, we identified a potential strategy, wanted to provide a lot of flexibility to scope this in more detail with agencies, with the community, but wanted to get a sense as we head into the long-range plan what level of effort may be required to get the streets up to standard. So is it something that could be done relatively easily with resurfacing or maybe building a trail and some existing open space? Or is it going to require a more costly effort to rebuild the street to get a comfortable facility? So next steps, the goal is that this feeds directly into the long-range plan, which you all know is underway now, looking out 20 years. And so combining these projects with other projects that you're hearing about from the congestion management plan, from the LECOM study, which you'll hear about shortly, to see which will be cost feasible going forward. A couple of just success highlights from the last long-range plan were those two SunTrail studies, which were identified for funding the long-range plan, moved forward, completed the study, and now aspects of these corridors are moving forward into further stages of PD&E and design. So nice to see how the projects get tracked through these larger regional plans into more specific projects to implementation. So that's all I have to share for you today, but happy to answer any questions as you explore the recommended action.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and get the motion, and we can do it under discussion, because we do need a motion.
Make a motion.
Okay, to adopt the transportation plan update. Mayor Bryant.
Second.
Vice Chair Nunder. Councilwoman Coker.
Yeah, with regard to the SunTrail, I don't know where in the process, are you doing any public meetings with the neighborhoods that might be, because when you've moved off of Manatee Avenue and gone down into some of I know one of the members of council is wanting to have some public meetings because it will affect some of those neighborhoods and their on-street parking. Where have you any meetings that were ever had were so long ago, it's probably not even the same homeowners?
So yes, we've done substantial, or as Jennifer previously mentioned, we did 2 additional SunTrail studies that took about 18 months back in about 2022, 23. And we did have substantial outreach that went into both of those. We had alternatives to the north, to the south, remaining on Manatee Avenue. And the overwhelming opinion or perspective was to move that off of Manatee Avenue, as people didn't feel safe walking or biking along that as a route. We also have extremely limited right of way to be able to build a facility to the stature of what SunTrail requires, which is at least a 12-foot divided path to be able to eligible for funding. So certainly this on the map would require a substantial further review, right? If this moved into PD&E and project development and environmental review, as well as future design, all those considerations would have to be taken into account. So yes, there would be ample opportunity for the public and those that are living along that specific route to come out and say, we don't want this in front of our house, or whatever it might be. We're certainly going to take that into account, and the department would have to do that as well, specifically using SunTrail funding, which is a state-funded resource. It would have to follow all of those requirements.
Yeah, I think just educating them is the main part, and having those public meetings. So I don't know when that will take place, but I know we've had a couple of questions from another council person about it, especially the Southern Parkway.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be
section of it.
Yeah. So Southern Parkway going to expand it as well. And yes, that would certainly, as funding availability happens. Obviously, we'll know in advance of when it's programmed. There'll be ample time to go out in the community and say, this is happening. Please give your opinion and your feedback on this alternative. So yeah, there'll be plenty of opportunity for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have a motion by Mayor Bryant, second by Vice Chair Nunder. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. And the last action on today is 7D, Lecom Park and Village of the Arts, VODA Planning Study Final Report. That'll be done by Robert Moody's. Bennett will present. Yep.
Yeah, another one of our consultant teams here today with us today to present the final update for the Lecom Park. This one's come several times, but this is something that we wanted to make sure that we provided you with some final thoughts. I know Mayor Brown, we've come to City Council and presented on this topic as well, and I think it was received extremely well. And we're happy to continue doing this work. So with you today is Robert from Benish, who will provide you with a final update on this report. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again, Robert Mody's Benish. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our Lecom Village of the Arts Mobility Study. So going a little bit about the project background, the study area needs, what we found from our needs assessment, some of the projects that we recommended to kind of identify or to address those needs, how those were prioritized, some funding and next steps, and then happy to take any questions if you have any. So a little on the project background. This study came from the LRTP, and it was to really just kind of take a comprehensive look at the transportation system around the spring training field. So looking at current transportation system needs, the complete streets network improvements to try to get some of those improvements in the study area, safety enhancements, of course, and then how can we address and enhance accessibility within the area? So public engagement, we did a online survey that was also kind of distributed on MCAT transit vehicles. It was also distributed at a Bradenton Green Market. As well, we did 2 walking audits, one that was with our stakeholder working group, which was made up of representatives from city staff, FCAT or MCAT and FDOT. And another with the general public as well. That was really great way to get out and kind of see the study area on foot. And 2 pop-up workshops, of course, one at Motorworks Brewing and one at the Bradenton Public Market. So kind of going where folks are already at. And then, of course, we also presented to the MPO committees, MPO board and the city council. So a little of what we found on study area needs. So really recognizing this is a changing built environment. There is a ton of redevelopment on the corridors within the study area as far as going to mid-rise away from that kind of older single-story industrial commercial. Also a very, very significant investment coming from the city into City Park and that area around there, expanding the baseball field, getting some additional tractors over there. Really constrained right-of-way, very narrow roadways, especially those north-south corridors, and very unlikely to be able to, procure additional right-of-way. Safety issues all throughout, but especially on 14th, Business 41, Tamiami. And then just generally lighting all throughout, drainage issues, some sidewalk gaps, sidewalk quality, crosswalks that are missing, maybe needed, maintenance needs all throughout, striping signage especially, and a lack of bike facilities, no designated bike facilities in the study area at all. So some of the big projects that we went ahead and recommended and developed for addressing some of those needs. So the first would be 14th Street Tamiami Trail. Looking at taking that roadway. Right now it functions as a 2-lane and 1 lane in each direction roadway because there are no left turn lanes. So anytime somebody needs to make a left turn, just about, they have to come to a full stop, which creates congestion down the line. So really looking at repurposing that lane to get wider sidewalks, wider travel lanes. Right now, very narrow travel lanes, but it's a transit and a freight route. Frequent pedestrian crossings, making, whether it's through new signals, potential roundabouts, or mid-block crossings, so that it's a little bit safer to cross that street. And looking at installing, as part of that, a center landscape median with left turn lanes, of course. So next steps would be, because that's a lane repurposing, early initiation with FDOT for that conversation on what a lane repurposing would look like. Making sure that there is a really, really robust traffic study that is taking into consideration all the other things that are going around, as well as recent statutory changes to lane repurposings. Making sure that that public outreach is going along with statute or even exceeding that as well. And then reviewing those right-of-way needs, especially as they pertain to potential roundabouts. Funding, we think that this is a really, really strong possibility for federal grant funding, especially because of the documented safety needs. And it's also eligible for potential state funding as well, in addition to local match. 9th Street, similar roadway with different problems. Right now it has very, very wide travel lanes, no medians, but it does have that left turn lane. So it kind of allows you to travel much faster than is maybe comfortable for people walking, especially as we start getting more folks going to baseball games to and from downtown and within the Village of the Arts. So recommending introducing a landscape center median, keeping those left turn lanes, of course, more frequent crossings, mid-block crossings for people walking, widening those sidewalks with a future full reconstruction of that roadway, which allows you to also enhance your stormwater drainage, and looking at some potential opportunities for new signals and for some roundabouts. This is another, because there's not a lane repurposing, the requirements are not as robust, but there should still be a very significant traffic study that, of course, would that would incorporate potential changes should changes on Tamiami be implemented. It also needs, significant public outreach so that folks are engaged in this process, coordinated it well with the city field work as well. And then reviewing that right-of-way or those right-of-way needs for potential roundabouts. This one is also a great opportunity for federal grant funding, as well as some local funding from the CRA, in addition to potential state funding. And then finally, to address that bicycle connection to the previous presentation's point about low-stress networks, and to the kind of reality that there is not really a lot of room on these north-south major corridors, we're proposing the Village of the Arts Bike Boulevard. So what this does is it takes existing neighborhood streets, kind of maintains those in their current form, but with some minor traffic calming and wayfinding, potentially through pavement art, to kind of establish a bike boulevard network that would connect you to downtown, through the Village of the Arts, over to Lecom Park, north to a future Sunrail connection as well, and then to the neighborhood to the south as well. This also has an opportunity for some streetscaping opportunities to replace selected on-street parking spaces with, green stormwater infrastructure, as well as some opportunities to kind of do sidewalk bump outs to include potential, street furnishings and public art as well. We see this as a really great opportunity to develop a branded wayfinding system, as well as opportunities to engage with the public art group within the Village of the Arts as well. This is also one that the CRA is very, very interested in pursuing clean water state revolving loan funds to construct some of those stormwater elements. So a lot of interest from the CRA on getting this one funded as well. So prioritization, just kind of a note on that this is a decision-making tool. It's not a commitment to project order of when they should be implemented. But the goal was to achieve a balance between various city and MPO goals, as well as kind of, being cognizant of the cost and complexity of projects. So looking at that, we provided the stakeholder working group made up of staff and other practitioners with these prioritization factors. They went ahead and rated those based off of their opinion, and we came up with this general ranking. As far as it goes is at the top we have safety, followed by multimodal benefit, accessibility, and equity is tied with resilience. Funding, implementability, so how easy it is, or how expensive are these projects, how complicated are they to implement, do they align with previous planning efforts, are they easily constructed, are there a lot of really significant utilities that may need to be moved, and then economy and tourism, how do they benefit this kind of study area as well. So those were applied to all project priorities and are reflected in our final report. So next steps, it's really for the city, it's kind of taking those short and long-term or short and midterm projects and really starting to get those constructed. A lot of this stuff is maintenance level, so it can be done very, very quickly. The midterm, a little bit more complicated, but again, mostly pretty simple things to do. It's just really identifying that funding and getting those designed and bid out for construction. And from that, for the long-term projects, it's really initiating that stakeholder engagement really early, especially with FDOT, business owners, property owners, residents, making sure to get that traffic study to the point where we're all comfortable with that, getting that traffic study initiated. And then from there, identifying some more specific project development needs. These are high-level, planning recommendations. So getting those to that engineering design standard, and then really getting them funded and getting them constructed. And happy to take any questions if y'all have any questions.
All right, well, thank you, Robert. And I'll entertain a motion to adopt the Braden and Lecom Park Village of the Arts District Planning Study. Then we'll have discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or questions? I'll just say a few things and some of the things we've done. When you're going down some of the streets, especially night, the right of way isn't there to acquire, to do any of the landscaping or different things and while still leaving the sidewalks open as big as possible. But what we're working through, and we've talked to several business owners, is kind of that public-private landscaping projects that we can still get the landscaping down the street, but do it in a collaborative way where we don't have to acquire the land, but, help them with that. One of the things that I think, we all have got to look at what happened to us over June, July, and August, 1st of September with 50+ inches of rain that, may happen more often, but we don't control is, you've done flooding and stormwater plans over the last several years. Well, we have our other issues, but City of Bradenton didn't have one house flood during that storm. So, you got to win on some of those things. And I know some of the others, we all had our issues, but that was one of the things we looked at. And one of our areas that flooded was Lecom. But we have done a multi-million-dollar project over the last several years to move the water so it doesn't sit going north to the river. As the tide's up, it's nowhere to flow. So we've brought it east and south and then back to north in some bigger capacity we have. So we've done those things already, which actually is going to make this project easier. We've also acquired several pieces of land along that roadway that obviously our CRA is going to want to develop into different projects and make it more walkable. And right now we're working through a master plan, even on our properties, to help. So, we figured we're probably going to, over the next 5 to 10 years, put over $100 million of grant city CRA money along with all of the parks we can do. Because if you think about it, from our downtown City of Bradenton through Village of the Arts to Lecom is less than a mile, but nobody will walk it because it doesn't feel safe. We've got to make it walkable. You go to bigger cities, you'll walk 5 miles to go to something because they have that transportation and the safety. So those are some of the things that not only with this plan, we're also working in the city in conjunction with making both streets better and more safe, because we do know in Manatee County and some of those close areas, we have some of the worst traffic fatalities that are just on the outskirts of that. Anything else? Hearing nothing, the chair will entertain the motion, or all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, and thank you for listening. Next presentation, we start with MPO 8AI Interim 2024 Safety Report. Now it's Ryan's turn to get going.
Keep going here. Yeah. I'll keep it brief for you all today. This is a standard safety report that we try to do every February. We're required to report on our safety metrics to the state. Consistently, we'll review some of the data here. This is our 7th time since being required to update our safety performance targets, and those will be coming due back again here at your January board meeting. Consistent with our prior years, we're remaining in concert with our partners, the DOT, and then and leaving our safety targets across the board for our major 5 metrics as zero, stating that no death or serious injury is acceptable. So when we take a look at general trends, these shouldn't really come as a surprise. Our daily vehicle miles traveled is up. However, our annual crashes are raising at a rate higher than what can be anticipated for that vehicle miles traveled. Because it's always the main question, right? Well, we have more people here, so there's going to be more crashes. Well, we've compared that relative to the rate of growth, and we're still increasing at a 5.5% rate. So that takes into account, who's involved in that, and that's what this attempts to get into. So we're looking at our total crashes year over year. You can see the trend here from 2020 up to 2024. The estimation as of now, we only have through June 30th. So far this year, we've got through June 30th, 11,000 crashes, 61 fatalities, and 452 serious injuries. One thing to note is that the fatality and serious trend of serious injury trends are heading in opposite directions. Fatalities are occurring more frequently, and serious injuries are decreasing. We can make some estimations as to why that's happening. My best guess is that cars are becoming safer, but our share of bike ped crashes when people are getting in fatal car accidents are people hitting people on bikes and people that are walking. Car-to-car accidents, cars are getting safer. That is true across the board. So there is this interesting trend. I think there's a lot of statewide and national research that's looking into why these occurrences are happening. Specifically in the state of Florida, that we experience a disproportionate amount of serious injury and fatalities on our network in comparison to the rest of the country. So our rolling average, you look at the estimated rolling average for the upcoming year, an increase in fatalities by 1, but a decrease, as mentioned, in serious injuries at a pretty substantial rate. So that's something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on and continue to evaluate why that's happening and see what we can do with our other partners. This is a good opportunity for our statewide events and for our work with other MPOs is this a trend that's happening statewide, or is this kind of a phenomenon that's happening in our region? So just something to keep note of as we continue reporting here through the rest of the year. So the percent change, like I said, 4% increase in fatalities, but a 37% decrease in serious injury. So an interesting outcome from some of the data that we've collected over the last several years. And with that, I will take any questions you might have. Like I said, this is a moving target. As of now, we're only, this was a halfway through the year estimation of our safety data. But certainly we did have the opportunity to go meet with the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, presented to one of their traffic divisions on this data as well. And we're trying to make sure that we're overlapping a lot of our information as you approved on the consent agenda, our safety education implementation plan. And our goal is to make sure that we're getting out there and spreading this information and seeing that we can better understand the trends that are occurring out there. So I'll happily take any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? Yes, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had a breakdown of the accidents based on whether they're residents or visitors?
That's a difficult question, but I will say there is statistics and data out there that relates. That's primarily the time of year. We can see it disproportionate, and we are trying to locationally base a lot of those. So that's another thing that we're looking at around the state too. Is where are those accidents occurring? Happening in our high frequency tourism areas, and when are those happening? Either throughout the year. Are they happening on the weekends? We do have very in-depth safety data. So if you need something specific, we can draw down on that. But there are, seasonal versus AM, PM versus all different types of analysis that we can do to get you more clarity on that if you'd like further information.
Right. Councilwoman Coker and then Vice Mayor.
Yes. With the installing, I don't know if it's just in Manatee County, but we're putting up the
Hawk signals.
Pardon?
The Hawk signals.
The cameras, the cameras in the school zones.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And it really brought to attention that there is so much almost sign pollution. And especially now, I mean, even you've got all these additional poles going on at the intersection for cameras, for signalization, for notifications. And is there ever a holistic look? I mean, distracted driving is a problem, but especially when you're talking about combining pedestrians and cars and slowing down. And I know I'm now trying to figure out what speed am I supposed to be at? Where am I supposed to? Where does this end? Where does it start? And I mean, do we ever look at that holistically?
That's not a bad question. Sometimes I think to myself, I couldn't read all these signs if I wanted to driving by, right? I'd never look at the road. And when am I going to text? Just kidding. But seriously though, but seriously, you're right. Like you couldn't read them all if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think it's a great point when you're looking at standardization specifically in, either it's county or state right of way, whatever it might be, there might be, overlap or things that need to be evaluated in terms of, how many signs are actually feasible for the average person to read or understand when you're in the field. So I think that's certainly part of it. And I think that's a great task for the state as well as for us to make sure that we're evaluating, when we're going and putting out these types of improvements or, yield to pedestrians on the signals and all these other things that we're doing that are an attempt to improve the safety on our roadways might, unconsequentially cause further wrecks or distractions.
But the answer is supposed to be yes.
Yes.
And
The long answer is, the short answer is yes. The long answer is that I think it requires more evaluation. Yeah.
All right, Vice Mayor.
I wanted to go back to that, but first I wanted to go off of Commissioner Smith's comment as well. Any details, I would really appreciate receiving, not only sort of the bigger picture ones, but even the detailed ones of where the most dangerous intersections are, or the roads that, I know in the city, we are trying very hard to make folks on the road aware that there are bikers, pedestrians, we're doing everything we can. If those are for naught, then we need to figure something else out, because if that pedestrian bike versus car ratio fatality is increasing, maybe, it's an indication we need to do things a little differently. So any details you can get, I would really appreciate.
And I can answer that one. That one is in our, in the consent item under the safety report and our implementation plan. We just recently in that study updated our high injury network, which identifies major corridors where we experience, our area is relatively high in comparison to lots of parts of the country, but we've identified disproportionately high segments, at least 20, that there were higher, even within our region, serious injuries and fatalities. And those are areas that we're going to focus on. It's something along the lines of 60% of our fatalities are on 20 segments in our region. So gives us great cues to say, where do we need to focus our efforts and our funding?
Excellent. And then the other item has to do with Commissioner Coker's point as well. I've brought this to the attention, I believe, of FTOT, and I've had this conversation over many, many years about the hawk signals and how I think confusing they are for the driver and for the pedestrian. And the situation is that most drivers are taught when they drive, when they see a pedestrian, you stop, whether it's at a crosswalk or it's not. And then when it is at a crosswalk, you stop. And the hawk signals function at our roundabouts that you don't stop until you see the flashing yellow, right? And then the solid red, for sure you stop, which is opposite of what we're taught as drivers. So you see the pedestrian on the side, there's a pedestrian cross, nothing is flashing, so half the population stops automatically for the pedestrian, the other half goes through. It's particularly dangerous when you have two lanes, because one car stops, the other lane doesn't stop. And the one car that does stop, the person behind them, if they know that flashing signal rule, lays on their horn, right? So it's causing a lot of confusion. And then added to that, at the roundabouts, you have both sets of signs. You have the sign that says, points down and says, stop for pedestrians. And then on the pole, it says, stop when it's flashing. So these are conflicting signs at the roundabouts that I think are causing a tremendous amount of confusion. I'm hearing it all the time. The functionality of the roundabouts, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. People are really learning to navigate them, embrace them, appreciate what they're doing for traffic flow. But I'm hearing on the opposite end of that for the pedestrian, very negative comments about the confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an ongoing discussion, right? About best practices and how you evaluate some of those things. I think there's alternatives of, some pedestrian hybrid beacons are actual lights. They're red, yellow, green that people understand a bit better. Some are those, double yellow flashing with a red. So I do think there needs to be consistency, and we agree with that. And we can certainly, work with the department and take a look at signage to make sure that there is consistent messaging out there, and that, the opinion of the operation of the roundabout is consistent, not just for drivers, because we've heard similar, comments that drivers do appreciate the improved traffic flow within those roundabouts. But I have also heard similar complaints, or not, I complaints just simply, I don't know how to walk or bike through this roundabout safely. So that's something that we began to address on our implementation campaign through our safety is education on how to operate or use these things, and vice versa, not just for the pedestrian, but for the driver as well. So we'll make sure that we take a look and work with the department on evaluating, specifically signage and how these things operate so people are comfortable.
If I may, I want to say though, I think it's not a question of a learning curve. The signs are conflicting.
Okay.
The driver and the pedestrian don't know. Is the driver going to stop for me because it says stop for pedestrian? Or do I wait until it says walk and I wait until that, or do I just step into the road? I mean, if we could just get rid of the conflicting signage, which tells you one thing on one and another thing on another, that are literally right next to each other. I mean, that would be a big step. Pick one. Pick
Mr.
one or the other.
Secretary.
I'll hand it over.
I think, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think Vice Mayor is making very good points. We'll take a look at the signage at the roundabouts on 41. But this whole challenge about safety and how you comprehend signage and what you're supposed to do as a driver and a pedestrian at the various treatments, particularly we've been introducing new treatments over the years, right? I got to tell you something. My daughter 2 years ago took her driver's license, and she did go through the driver's license, the driver education course and all that stuff. And walking out of it, she had more knowledge than me about what to do on the roadway, right? And I'm a traffic engineer.
Mhm.
And I think there is a deep-rooted issue about how we go about renewing our driver's licenses and what is required of us as it relates to getting our driver's license renewed. No, how many of us took a driver's license? I'm sorry, a driver's education course when we renewed our license? I haven't done that for past 20, 30 years, right? After I got my license, and I get updated as part of my practice of all the things that need to be done. What about the general public? So we have a deep-rooted issue as it relates to what people know and understand about what they need to do as they drive on our roadways, or they walk and bicycle on our roadways. That's one thing. The second thing is it's a totally driver behavior issue, right? Vice Mayor, you talked about things that we are doing and implementing and what people do with what we are implementing on our system and the behavior that they bring, right? Is the root cause of all these crashes. We can do all the engineering solutions that we want and implement them. It's the behavior aspect that we need to address. We are implementing targeted campaigns to address and educate folks about how to safely drive, right? And how to safely walk and bicycle on our facilities. Until we see a change in thought process and the behavior, we're not going to see any decrease in these crashes. But the biggest focus in my mind, should be not about reducing crashes. It's about, like Ryan said, if two vehicles collide, are the people walking away from that, right? It should be about how to protect individuals, not to avoid crashes, because mistakes will happen, right? So that's the key point that we need to remember. Educating people and then creating a safe environment where if a crash happens, people walk away. Now, you talked about statistics in Sarasota, Manatee, right? And I've made the presentation to the Manatee Chamber of Commerce. Between the two regions, Manatee County is the worst. I can tell you that because Manatee County has about 9 out of 13 top high crash locations in our entire district. So we need to focus in Manatee County. You know, there's a lot of focus that we need to put in, and Mayor, I appreciate the comments that you made about creating that walkable environment in the right location, right? That's what we need to focus on. So what we've done is the state has taken the initiative to develop a target zero action plan for Manatee County. And when that action plan gets completed, every one of us has a responsibility to make sure policy wise, program wise, and then education enforcement wise, we implement all the strategies that are in there. So that's how we're going to make a difference.
Well, I think, and we'll go to Vice Chair in a moment and then Commissioner Turner. But I think one of the things that people have to understand too is we have to change the behavior of some of those worst roadways, because when you look at the behavior, a lot of it is being caused by the pedestrian, not the vehicle, because they're crossing and crosswalk 10 feet away and they're not in the crosswalk. So we've got to really get that out there. And then, you know, and there's going to be some things that I understand that's going to happen that some people are going to get mad about because they may have to walk another quarter of a mile to get to cross the street, but safety is number one. So I think that's something we as government officials are going to really have to work on and elected. So Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. You guys hear me here? Is this okay?
Yeah.
All right, very good. I had that written down as far as new licensure, going through the same thing with my teenager, but also that re-education component that happens as we all renew our license, right? I think we can do it online now. And presumably those individuals that come from other parts of our country, right? And Commissioner Smith, I believe the disparity in accidents are referred to, we may all know, but not say, it's the snowbird effect, right? So we have people that come into our area that maybe just don't know what our rules and regulations are. So I think, to our chair's point, that education component is key. I don't know what metrics, Ryan, can happen when you go to the tax collector, you know, you get your license or your kids, but just reiterating that point of education is huge. And secondly, the other thing that is in my area, it's very prevalent, are the bicycle, I call them the bicycle gangs, that on the weekends, they meet at Publix with their bikes. They all park, they get off, and they do these road workouts. And you can see, you know, it's not uncommon to see a dozen or more. How do you make sure that those individuals understand, you know, the traffic patterns of where they're going, you know, the rules and regulations? When they get going, I mean, they're going 30, 35 miles an hour sometimes. And, you know, to stop at that speed, but you know, how do you educate them? Is it the bike shops? It's at the clubs? I don't know, but in my area where I live, there's every weekend a lot. And we have had, I think the data would include some fatalities and some bicycle in the Venice area proper and a little bit south. So what I'm kind of getting, Ryan, is that there's an opportunity here maybe for education on multiple levels. And certainly I would appreciate any campaign that will help educate the community. And I'm not really sure, Vice Mayor Koch, what to do about the roundabouts. Those are confusing as it is. Try to get a biking gang, I call them, to go through a roundabout. It's very confusing. So I don't know, but I think education and certainly your expertise background can help. Yeah. And I'm on board with anything that anybody on this board has recommendations for.
Yeah. And I'll just answer that briefly. Yeah, absolutely. The implementation plan that we just, you know, went through on consent, that is the first principle that we thought we could address. You know, there's these 60s, right, that go into these, you know, enforcement, education. We saw ourselves as the MPO as an entity from a regional perspective that our best use would be through the education and outreach. It's something certainly that we're going to continue to do. Like I said, we're working on getting into schools as well, and a lot of other opportunities that are out there, bike groups specifically, lots of other opportunities that are out there for us to continue to share these statistics. You know, an easy one is 20% of all of our fatalities are pedestrians or bicyclists. That seems relatively high considering the trip share of that is relatively low. You know, 90% plus of all of our trips are done in single occupancy vehicles. So if 20% of our fatalities in the region are bike ped, that's disproportionately high in comparison to the number of trips we're making. So these kinds of things that say, well, maybe our behavior does need to be modified, as LK mentioned. There's lots of ways that we need to address it, not just one single, yes, enforcement, signage, the way we design things. but a lot of it is behavior. Distracted driving is actually by far and away the number one cause of serious injury and fatality on our roadways. There's all these things that go into it, that continuing education, and I agree, there needs to be an evaluation for licensing. How old can you be when you continue to drive? There's all these things that people need to look at. Inspections and vehicle inspections on our cars. No, it's not a popular take, but the things that are driving around out there on our roads, I think we've all seen it. Some of them are probably not roadworthy and create unsafe environments for lots of people. So building redundancies into these so that when something does inevitably happen, like I said, crash happens, we're all walking away from it. Building that redundancy and understanding of our system is extremely important.
Commissioner Turner.
Yeah, not to flog a dead horse, but some of the things that I was going to mention have been mentioned. But I will say this, I mean, I think there's been a lot of effort with the signage and everything else to improve. But at the end of the day, like everyone's trying to allude to, it's driver habit. I went to high school in England. I learned how to drive over there. They actually do yield to pedestrian crossing. Okay, quiet over there. I'm going to tell you what, every day that I drive around, I'm 61 years old. I am frustrated with the fact that nobody's got their brain turned on. It's not just roundabouts. It's people turning a corner, going 2 miles an hour. They don't put their indicator on. Like, it's everywhere. It's habits. Bottom line, it's bad habits. Whether it be roundabouts or a regular pedestrian crossing, people blow through them. It's a bad habit. They're distracted. But most of all, most people coming to Florida or live in Florida don't turn their brain on when they get behind the wheel. They go in auto. Honest to God.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to, I'm sorry.
Just one more comment. Vice Mayor Cox, it came to me, we're in the driver's manual, flashing red lights are for railroad crossing. You're supposed to stop. Flashing red lights at a roundabout, you're supposed to keep going. I mean, talk about mixed signals. So I think we need to look at what our signalization is and what we're telling these people to do. The visitor thing, I live in a tourist area. They stop in the middle of the street. They just stop because they don't know where they are. So you can't cure that. But I think we can cure the signage and what we are teaching folks to do, and then what we're actually putting the signs out.
Yeah.
Well, I think just to make a comment, that's why Manatee County has lagged behind in the roundabouts. We want you guys to fix it. When it comes up there, it'll be perfect for Manatee County. Yeah, to doing it. But no, serious. It's, I think education will be huge. Plus fixing some of that confusion is a great idea. So, all right, moving on under the MPO presentation, 8AII 2025 call for projects. Ryan?
Yeah, this is just more of an FYI for you all. As we do on an annual basis, we issue our call for projects for integration into our project priority process and ultimately into the FDOT work program. The call this year will be issued September 30th, so next Monday. Jurisdictions will have the opportunity to apply for projects. We have a review period tied in there through November, as well as ultimately submitting those applications to us in early December. We'll have a draft list for you all in January, and then ultimately a final draft that will be sent out to the department in March. These projects will then be considered for integration and funding in the federal in the FDOT work program, as well as our future TIP and STIP. So really, this is just a notification to you all that you'll be seeing these at your upcoming meetings. You'll likely have to vote on them at your each individual respective commissions or councils for approval, and then they'll make it back to the MPO board for final consideration.
Okay, any questions on that? They're pretty simple there. All right, thank you, Ryan, appreciate it. Now we'll move on to the FDOT presentation, 8BI. It's a Braden and Palmetto Connector Alternative Corridor Evaluation, the ACE study update. So thank you for this. And I know probably one of the most important things for our region over the next little bit of time. So welcome.
A little bit of time, like you said. Well, we know it's been a long meeting. Thank you all for your patience, and thank you to the board for allowing us the opportunity to present today. We are presenting on the Bradenton Palmetto Connector ACE, or Alternative Corridor Evaluation Planning Level Study. We're going to give you an overview of the project, some of the criteria we're using to evaluate the project, and then what's coming next for as the project moves out of the ACE process. My name is Michelle Rudeshauser. I am a consultant, but I work in-house at FDOT as an extension of FDOT staff. Jimmy Vilsay is the project development manager at FDOT District 1, and Gail Woods is the consultant PM with Trans Systems that's doing the study. So just by way of a brief overview of FDOT's project development process, it's a 5-stage process, starting with planning, PD&E, and then moving into design, right-of-way, and construction. Public outreach and public involvement is a big part of FDOT's process, and it's through all phases. You can see that phases 1 and 2 are funded. Thank you to the MPO for their assistance with funding on the PD&E study to keep this project moving along. So we are currently in phase 1, and what this means is we're doing a 100,000-foot planning level study of the Bradenton-Palmetto connector, looking for locations where there could be a potential new bridge crossing over the Manatee River to connect Bradenton and Palmetto. Like I said, the second phase, the PD&E phase, is fully funded. Gail will get into the schedule in a minute, but once we're done wrapping up phase 1, which will be done in December, January timeframe, we're moving right into phase 2. So phase 2 will begin in January of 2025. So just by way of overview, as Mayor Bryant talked about, we are looking at emergency evacuation corridors here. That's extremely important for Manatee County. We're looking to improve regional mobility. We're looking to engage the public. All of these items here are the high-level main goals of this project as it moves through each phase of that project development process, and they're all consistent with FDOT's model for their compass. So in terms of public outreach, we've done a considerable amount of public outreach since this project kicked off. We've had over 80 meetings. We've met with large businesses, different groups. We've attended events, neighborhood associations. We've met with lots of cities, councilmen, commissioners. We have continued public outreach. We're meeting with some of the CRAs, the Manatee Chamber Young Professionals Organization, and then we also have a public meeting coming up in November specifically for this project. So with any planning and PD&E study, especially projects that receive federal funding, which this project does, FDOT's process is to establish a purpose and need. Very simply, the purpose and needs need to be both quantifiable and defendable. For this project, it is very simple. We're looking for a way to address capacity over the Manatee River while also addressing safety and multimodal needs. Part of the alternative corridor evaluation process is we start with what's called a methodology memo, which essentially is the baseline for how we're going to analyze the corridors that we're looking at. And we'll show a map in a moment of those 10 corridors. And so the methodology memorandum has been written, it's been approved at the FDOT central office level. And so our team now is using this methodology memorandum as a baseline to evaluate all of the 10 corridors against one another to determine which ones are feasible and which ones are not. The next step in the process is the alternative corridor evaluation report. That's where we are now. We have a draft report at the district that's getting reviewed and revised by the consultants, and then that will ultimately also go to central office for review and approval coming up in October. And so these are the 10 corridors that we're evaluating. All 10 corridors start at State Road 70, and then many of them end at the US 4119 split. Some of them go a little farther north. There are varying degrees of lengths. The important thing that I want to drive home here is that the goal of the ACE study is to really evaluate where the corridor can go, where the most feasible location is, not so much what the corridor is going to look like. At this stage, we're not really looking at typical sections, whether it's going to be a 4 or 6 lane, whether it's going to be at grade or elevated. Those items will be looked at in the PD&E when we start that process in January. I'm going to turn it over to Gail, and she's going to give some details on the analysis.
Thank you, Michelle. In our methodology memo, there were several items that we reviewed. And one of those, meeting the purpose and need, is the traffic data. So we looked at the projections for the 2040 traffic for each of the corridors and comparing those with one another. We also looked at the social and economic impacts. What is the minority population in those areas? The commercial impacts, industrial impacts, residential impacts, institutional, impacts. We also looked at the cultural, natural, and physical. Are we hitting any cemeteries, any floodplains, any endangered species? And finally, the cost. How much do each of these corridors cost? So this is just an example of the tables that we have in our methodology memo. It's a matrix. And again, the primary is looking at the capacity, transportation demand, safety, and the intermodal relationships. We went through the GIS information and filling all this information out for each of the 10 corridors. What is the percentage of the minority population? How many households do not have vehicles? What are the educational impact facilities and impacts that we have in the area? And then for project costs, we looked at design costs, mitigation costs, utility costs, and right-of-way costs. So with that, these are the 10 corridors that we have. And in looking at all that data, we have eliminated 5 corridors. And those corridors are F and G. And these are the 2 corridors that are west of the Green Bridge. With those corridors, when we looked at the traffic data, they carried the least amount of traffic, and they also had the highest impacts to residential parcels. So we eliminated those 2 corridors. We also have Corridor E, which was formerly known as the golf course community. This is corridor. This is the corridor that goes through the River Run golf links. There will be a bridge over the Braden River, State Road 64, as well as the Manatee River. And in our discussions with the Water Management District, this would be a hard corridor to get permitted, as there are better options. So we've eliminated that corridor. And then finally, we've eliminated corridors H and I, which have CD roads that run alongside of I-75. Since we have those improvements on I-75, plus the planned improvements, we've eliminated those 2 corridors. So the corridors that are being moved forward and will be further refined and eliminated are corridors A, B, C, and D. And our goal is to have 3 corridors that we move forward to the PD&E study. And again, as Michelle mentioned, there we will look at the, the actual typical section, do a further deep dive in the traffic to see how many lanes would be required in those corridors. So if we do a recap of the schedule, as Michelle mentioned, we already have approval of the methodology memo. We've already submitted the draft ACER report for review. We just received comments, and our goal is to take those 5 corridors down to 3 corridors. And those are the 3 corridors that will be presented to the public in our public workshop, which is scheduled for November. And then after that, after the workshop, we'll finalize the report and then move forward with the PD&E study in January. And with any FDOT presentation, there's always a safety moment. Do not drive while you're drowsy, because driving drowsy is similar to driving drunk. And with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Questions, comments? Nope, I think we've heard this for years and years and years, and we're ready to next steps. So we really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the last part of this meeting will be about comments and then one presentation. Right, Dave?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So any other member comments before we go to the? Yes, ma'am.
Just one question. I just wanted to request a specific report on the mid-block crossing in Palmetto on Eighth Avenue. So that I have something to leave my successor.
Absolutely, and we can, Ann and myself, we'll pull that for you. It is underway. The
Okay.
right-of-way phase is funded as well as the construction. So as far as I know, it was delayed a year due to the need for the right-of-way phase, but it is underway.
Okay.
And it is anticipated to be completed in 2027.
Okay,
I
thank
can get you
you.
information on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
So at this point, seeing no other member comments, I'd like to kind of read something. I've made comments over the last couple meetings, but from the Sarasota Manatee MPO for a certificate of appreciation to Mayor Shirley Groover Bryant. Just a little bit about appreciation for her governing board since 2010. She's been on this board serving as chairman twice, in 2020 and in 2012. And then she was vice chair in 2011 and 2019. And I think one of the things that we've seen with Mayor Bryant in all her years of government public service is she's always about, her town and getting things done, but she's also about the collaboration of making other things happen and work for the good of the whole with a positive, very engaging personality. So Mayor Bryant, I'd like to thank you. And I mean, we're going to miss you, but we know you're going to enjoy not having answer the phone at times. So thank you.
Totally miss y'all because it has been very engaging and it always keeps you on your toes. It really does. And I challenge anybody to disagree with that, that's served on this board, and especially if you've served as chair or vice chair. So anyway, but thank you for the staff has been awesome. I have to say, the secretary's office, all the staff that I've worked with has just really tried to make our jobs easier. So you are very blessed.
Let's present you with your presentation. You want to take a picture? Joe did it. Yeah. Thank you. And once again, thank you, everybody, for coming. And hopefully, with the way we've adjusted the meetings, that'll continue and really get our transportation in where we're able to have that part of it. So anything else, Dave, for the good of the whole?
No, there are a couple of other members, I guess, might not be their last meeting, but they.
Right.
I appreciate everyone's
Yeah, we
service
appreciate
on this
and
board.
elections have consequences, but we'll figure that out as we go. So, all right, we'll be adjourned.
No.
It is.
Okay.
I guess
That's supposed to.
Yeah, I guess it is now.
Don't worry about it.
I actually wasn't supposed to.
No, you're fine.
Oh, God, okay.
You're fine.
Sorry.
No.